this panel today, I'm joined by fantastic women who are part of politics in various spaces in their countries, who've successfully run and who are preparing to run for political office. To begin with, I'm joined by Advocate Fadzayi Mahere, who's a former member of parliament. Fadzayi practices as an advocate at the Harare Bar. Her main fields of practice include constitutional law, human rights, commercial law. She also takes on appellate criminal work and specialized crime. She holds a master's in international law from the University of Cambridge and a Bachelor of Laws from the University of Zimbabwe. She has also completed the executive leadership course at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Fadzayi joined Zimbabwe's main opposition party in 2019 and served as a national spokesperson between 2020 and 2023. In August 2023, Fadzayi was elected Member of Parliament for Mount Pleasant constituency. She's going to talk about her resignation and much more later on in this conversation. I am also joined by the phenomenal Dr. Josephine Kulea, the founder of Samburu Girls Foundation, a Mandela Washington Pioneer alumni. She's a child rights activist and human rights defender. She's also an SWBV fighter, and she fights towards ending harmful cultural practices against forced genital mutilation, child marriage, and beating. She's an activist and SRHR expert with over 15 years of experience. Dr. Kulea also ran for women representative in Kenya in a county called Samburu County in the northern part of Kenya, which is one of the most marginalized counties in the country. And she's also preparing to successfully run and win in the upcoming 2027 elections in Kenya. We will later on be joined by Honorable Joyce, who's sadly in a funeral currently, but is also going to try and make the time to be part of this conversation. Honorable Joyce is a member of parliament in Uganda, Joyce Bagala, who's going to be joining us in this conversation. Thank you to all of you who've made the time for this call and to have these conversations. I will request, if you have any questions for our guests, please type them out, and I will make the point to ensure our guests answer all the questions. Fadzayi and Dr. Kulea, welcome. I'm so excited to have this conversation. And just as a by the way, when I mentioned that we were having this panel, everybody wanted to join and just listen and engage around women in politics. I'm going to begin with you, Fadzayi. You've had extensive experience in the political space. You've campaigned, you've successfully won, but you've done something very few, if any, African politicians do, and that is to resign. Before we get to why you resigned, my question is, how difficult is a campaign trail for African women, and why is it so difficult in your experience?
Thank you very much, Natasha, and a very good afternoon, or whatever time of day it is, to everyone. It's such a privilege to be here, and I look forward to learning and hearing everyone's insights today. I'll cut straight to it. I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with the political context in Zimbabwe. Ever since Robert Mugabe died, everyone has sort of like forgotten that we are really a very complicated dictatorship. And if anything, things have become worse ever since the coup in 2017. So Zimbabwe is a political environment that's fraught with violence, electoral manipulation. It's dangerous to be an opposition politician. You'll get jailed for tweeting and convicted for tweeting. You'll go to the country's maximum prison. It really is that sort of environment. But it is 10 times more difficult to do so as a woman, because all these difficulties compound when you are dealing with a woman. I'll just give a few examples. When I was arrested, the first thing is that there's no holding prison for women in Zimbabwe. So if you're a woman politician who's arrested on a political charge, you are sent to the country's maximum prison and you're sharing a cell with convicted murderers, robbers, the lot of it. They were actually really sweet, but I'm just trying to highlight, what you sort of face. In addition to that, there was no water. There's no water in jail. There's no running water. So obviously, if you're a man, I guess you can live with it. But if you're a woman, just imagine being on, just menstruating in the middle of COVID, sleeping on the floor. You've got wet blankets that have got blood stains. It hits so much harder as a woman. I'll move away from that example and come to a different one. When I was a parliamentarian, every time I hit the microphone to speak, the speaker would say, sit down, because he knew I was going to come up with something. So anyway, there's a time when I just got sick of it and I was like, Honorable Speaker, with all due respect, I'm not going to sit down because this is a point of order and the standing rules allow me to speak. And you have to hear it first and adjudicate on it. You can't just shut it down. That's the law. And there is parliamentary privilege here. I should be allowed to articulate myself. He'd say, sit down, Honorable Mahere. And then obviously I'd refuse. And then he'd be like, well, get out of the chamber. And I was like, I'm not getting out. The Privileges and Immunities Act allows me to remain here. He called in riot police. So you've got all these riot police that are armed, that have got bats and sticks. And now imagine you're a woman. Thankfully, I go to the gym and you're like fighting off all these police officers. It hits so much harder as a woman. If you're a guy, you can sort of push it, but then, you've got these police officers rubbing up against your body, pushing you. They're quite strong. It hits differently as a woman. I'll move away from that example to maybe the last one that I want to give, the online space. I remember when I was spokesperson for the main opposition, you'd come up with a brilliant economic blueprint and, set out a press conference and deliver the most crisp policy alternative for Zimbabwe's economy. And if you know anything about the economy, like so much needs to change in Zimbabwe, but you go through it and you've, assiduously put together all these things. You've consulted a range of experts. You really have, familiarized yourself with the space. The first question you get asked by the journalists after delivering this 30-minute economic blueprint is, are you married? When are you going to get married? And then the conversation online shifts to, oh, well, the reason you speak so much and the reason you're so rude is because you don't have a husband to control you. Where is your father? Why isn't he telling you to shut up? This is just so uncontrolled. Worse still, they'll scandalize you and accuse you of sleeping with a married man, sleeping with the party leader. And as you all know, the easiest way to discredit a woman politician is to just say she's having an affair or she's pregnant by the party leader. God forbid that you gain a little bit of weight. People will start saying she's pregnant, and they'll zoom in on your abs. They'll zoom in on your abdomen and say, look, the little baby, the little, illegitimate baby that she's having is coming. So those are some of the challenges that women face in the political space in Zimbabwe, which is already difficult for any opposition, male or female, but for a woman, it's a lot more difficult. And, if ever, I've, aligned or identified with what Hillary Clinton says in her book about how you really have to have skin as thick as a rhinoceros to make it. Over the last 6 years, I've absolutely seen it with my own eyes. And, I choose courage. I'm not going to be afraid. Not to mention when they start following you around, they'll smash your vehicle. You're a woman. It's a lot more dangerous. You live alone. You've got soldiers parking outside your house. You have an armed robbery at home. It hits differently when you're a woman. But anyway, we soldier on. Sorry for that long and convoluted answer, Natasha, but in there is just really, in short, it really can be extremely tough.
Sorry, Natasha, you're on mute.
I'm so sorry. Sorry, the stage is all yours. We're here to listen and learn, Fadzayi. And as always, I love learning and hearing from you. There are a few things I'd like to pick up before I move on to Dr. Kulea, and particularly around violence and how because of the patriarchal nature of our society, we often ignore the violent nature of politics, particularly for women and those from marginalized communities. Do you think political parties, in your experience, are doing the best they can to protect political candidates? And those who are not in political parties and choose to be independent candidates, what alternatives do you think they have to navigate this extremely violent political spaces that we occupy as women?
Let me say that political parties are just a microcosm of the wider society. So if you've got a violent patriarchal society, a political party is just a smaller family where those very same values are often embodied. And look, politics is a contact sport. Everybody is jostling for power. People will say, you know, why is she being appointed spokesperson? She's new, she's young, she's a woman, you know, so the easiest way to deal with me is to just go for the soft bit, which is the women stuff. And, you know, you'll typically find that a lot of the rumors around you're having an affair with the party leader, you were in an office, or you traveled to XYZ event, that will come from party insiders. So it's not as though, even, you know, I mean, with all due respect, even to women politicians, when people feel like you are taking up space that they believe they should take, they will also join in and you know, make it difficult for you. So I think political parties ought to do a lot more, but nobody is going to give you anything on a silver platter. It's going to be extremely difficult, because remember that whatever space you occupy, someone else at any given time is waiting in the wings, wanting to take up that position. And you'll also find that you know, it's sometimes difficult for Africans in particular to hear from a woman and to speak truth to power. Power is typically an old man who is old enough to be your father or your grandfather. It's extremely countercultural for you, the little girl. I mean, in most African societies, women are perpetual minors. You actually don't speak. You should sit down. Like, you don't get to speak. Someone speaks on your behalf, whether it's your brother, your father, your husband. You shouldn't have your own agency, as it were. And so, you know, people struggle with hearing a woman speaking, even if it's in a political party meeting. Because remember, that's where the resolutions are made. And certainly I'm sitting as your spokesperson. I'm going to be vocal about the competence of our resolutions, because I'm the one who's going to have to articulate them. So if they don't stack up, I'm the first person to say, excuse me, hold on. Mr. Chair, we've got a problem here. This doesn't align with our values. It's inconsistent with what we said last week, XYZ. But you're a woman, so people are like, Or if you succeed and you win the argument, people will be like, who is she sleeping with? How has she managed to, you know, get ahead? Or how did her viewpoint succeed? That's how people operate. Not to mention that there are people who'll just literally sexually harass you, send you messages and say, look, here you are thinking that, okay, we want to win the country for change, we want to go. They're like, oh, Fadzayi, you're so beautiful. Like, for heaven's sake, we're in the middle of a flipping struggle. Go to hell. And then also, like, you know, every leader in the party is a fundraiser. So often you'll be sent to, you know, on these fundraising assignments, and, you know, at any given time, you have to represent brand political party. You know, men who are in positions of influence, the first thing they want to do is be like, okay, so what's in it for me? Yes, I can donate to the campaign, but what's in it for me? You know, and what they're talking about there are sexual favors. And you're like, oh, no, dude, you know, I don't roll like that. And then, you know, sometimes you'll find ice, and it just is what it is. You know, I'm quite fortunate that I operate in a male-dominated profession. So I've got a little bit of experience in how to deal with that. But I have to say, it really is difficult. And sometimes you have to go as far as suing people just so that people just learn the lesson that, look, don't mess with me. Don't look at me as an object that you hit on. Like, I'm here to do the job. And this is not a space where I'm, looking for anything other than winning Zimbabwe for change, as the case may be.
I love that, and I think there's so many things here to explore, and we'll explore it along this conversation. That women are viewed as perpetual minors or objects.
Yes.
And when we were having conversations with Ugandan MPs in early September, we got the same feedback. In fact, 4 out of 5 of them kept being asked for sexual favors when they were fundraising. So the only thing that was being asked of in return was sex. So a number of women who are campaigning end up not fundraising and using their own resources, which leaves them far worse than they were before. So, Fadzayi, there's so many things that you've raised, and I'm going to circle back to that to ask many more questions and also explore how courageous you've been, because that's something we've not yet touched on. Dr. Kulea, what's unique about your situation is that you come from one of the most marginalized communities, but also, aside from marginalization, one of the most traditional communities, as evidenced by your regalia, the Samburu community. You attempted to run for office in 2022. And apart from 1 or 2 issues, I would say you were successful. Yes. What are the challenges you faced being a woman in this society, but also navigating politics in Samburu County?
Thank you very much, Natasha, and hi, Mahere. Actually, some of the challenges I faced were cultural, patriarchal, because in my community, if you want, like in a natural setup, if you want to speak as a woman, you don't stand up where men are. You speak seated while the men stand up. So that already tells you, like, from the very bare, basic minimum, you don't have a voice. And so when the government created the Women Representative Office, it was like a sigh of relief for some communities because now they can send women to run. But luckily, from where I come from, we have one great lady, a sister of mine called Honorable Naisula, who fought the men and ran for the MP, and she won twice. She's going for the 3rd time. We wish her the best. So right now, some of the challenges I faced was coming from an NGO background where I've been fighting harmful cultural practices. We still have FGM, child marriages at almost alarming rates in this community, and it's against the law in Kenya. And when I spoke about it and fought from my own family to my neighbors to everybody, and to say girls must go to school. Our girls are married between 8 to 12 years old. So I decided I'm going to fight that. So I was already rebellious enough and disrespectful enough to them because they're saying I was fighting culture. So the cultural and patriarchal became like, it was just automatic. It was there. So when I said I'm running for office, because unfortunately the lady who was there, who we managed to remove, she's been there for long, was still fighting our work. She was the woman representative, but fighting the work that we were doing, rescuing the girls and educating them. So we decided she has to go. And so that's an achievement that we got because she's been there for long. And until I came in and decided to disarrange her numbers, because she's like, I'll be coming back and again because nobody will take me out. And when I came, we sent her home. So I'm proud of that. So one of the things that I faced myself was an economic challenge, because women are facing economic inequality when you're running for office. And for the first time, I never even plan to run for office until 6 months to elections, because I decided, you know what, I'm not going to sit here and be fought by the people who are supposed to do the work that I'm doing. I'm just going to fight to get that person out of office first, then plan now how to get into office, because this was just like a last minute resort. So politics is very expensive, as we know. I think East Africa is the most expensive in the whole of Africa, or even globally. And I did a very bold thing. I went alone. I didn't do a lineup, people did lineups, and it was the whole county. You have to go across the whole county. I was looking for votes the same place a governor was running. And so they had all their lineups. The government had their people, they had their, the parties, big parties, they were being funded. I didn't have a party. I decided on a party 3 months to election. I just decided that I just believed in myself. And I said, I'm going for this thing and I'm going head on and I want to achieve 1, 2, 3. So I went there without money and we hit the ground and got very good votes. I don't want to say we won because when you say you won and you're not in the elected seat, but what they did was they took advantage because they said, that one has no backup, has no godfather, has nothing, nobody. Yeah, but she made it to go around and collected all these votes. So anyway, we are. So there was also the issue of safety and intimidation. And I was crisscrossing across there. People had convoys. People are going in teams, convoys. There's a whole lineup from presidential to governorship to, all these other senatorial positions. There's a whole lineup. I'm going alone, very bold. I have one car, my speakers are on top of the car, and I only had a PA in the car and one guy who knows the region. So we just went, 3 people doing a whole campaign, and you can imagine the campaign trail. People are coming with 20 cars, 30 cars, and I'm going alone in my own car and my speaker up there. And when we get there, we just hit the songs, we start dancing in the community. And the advantage we had was we had enough time to make sure we talk to people and convince them. And I'll tell you, everywhere I stopped alone, spoke for an hour or 2, people voted for us. Like people, because they had the time to listen, they had the time to question why we want to run. And in the safety and the intimidation, I was threatened on my way. I was stopped by some bandits. I come from a community where there's a lot of banditry. And someone just came up and said, oh, you're open in the centers, and said, we must shoot you. But anyway, give us some money and we let you go. So I gave them money and they went. And that was a big challenge because it was my first time and I didn't expect that it's going to be there. And also, just now I know for future, I know that maybe I should get security next time I go for campaigns. But that's one big challenge that women face. Like you're literally intimidated, even threats, physical threats. Like it's something that they think you can just scare them off. And one of the things under the patriarchal, I went to this village and, in my community, you must reach to everybody for you to be elected because they don't have the social media or all this stuff. You have to go to village, almost house to house. So I went to this rally under a tree and so the men, sometimes when they hear it's a woman coming to campaign, and they just sleep and cover their faces, they're listening to you, but they're not looking at you. And so when the elder, one who introduces the meeting, says, oh, we have a lady here who wants to ask you for your votes. And one shouted, tell her, don't look for the male seats. So I'm like, okay. So it was like in the interior part of Samburu. I'm like, all right, I get that. So when I stood up and introduced myself, and of course I had to tell them what seat I'm running for, so that they're like, oh, now we can listen, we can listen. So so that's also is a challenge. Like people just dismiss women when it's a woman coming to seek for votes. And the other thing I faced was the limited, generally limited mentorship for women who want to run for office. And I thank the Futurelect because now when I joined their first cohort in East Africa last year to learn on how to, to maneuver elections and how to run for office, I'm like, oh, finally there's something, because you just wake up. And it's also funny because my first rally in the community, I had never attended anybody's rally. I had never participated in a campaign. I don't know what people say. So I stood there and I was handed the microphone and I'm like, so what do people say? Then I remembered voices telling me people lie. I don't know, people say what? You just talk, I just said, no, I'm not gonna lie. You know what? I'm going to do civic education. Actually, we are in this place because there is no civic education going on in this country. So I decided I'm going to do civic education. And that's how I ran my campaign. And out of 15 ward representatives, we call them members of county assembly here. We have 15 in Samburu. Some of them have been here for 20 years because nobody questions them. People don't know why they're there. So I just took the mandate to do civic education. I'm like, I'm going to do civic education. I'll tell them why I'm running, and I'm telling them why everyone is running, because nobody tells them. So I decided, and out of 15 ward reps who've been there, like it's permanent seats, 12 were sent home because now people decided, these people have been taking advantage of us. So it's only 3 who came back, and I don't think those 3 are coming back this time around. So we are hoping, I was hoping that we continue to teach our people that you need to know your rights, you know why you're electing people, ask questions, ask for development, because it became like somebody sees, they would say, oh, that's Natasha's seat. Then it's forever Natasha's because it was Natasha who's been there. Why should she be replaced? There is no development, but it's Natasha's seat. So I did all this civic education, and we had great results. So I might not be in office, but I know that I made some impact on the ground. So those are some of the challenges that I faced, and I could say that I'm ready for them again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kulea. 2 things emerge for me from your amazing points and points of view. Is one, even after a loss, you did not give up. Oftentimes we retreat after a loss, dejected and feeling rejected, and don't go back. And here you are taking another stab at it. And that's something I want us to explore, how to successfully lose an election. How do you lose when you've put all your faith and hope in this thing? But I think another thing I want to touch on is, ironically, a lot of the people who campaign for politicians are women. Women are grassroots mobilizers. And this is to both of you. We'll begin with you, Fadzayi. Why is it? Why is it that we believe that they can campaign for us, but they're not good enough to lead? Where does the disassociation come from? And how can we shift that attitude that particularly the electorate have?
Goodness, Natasha, that is such a good question. I've got so much to say, but let me try be brief. The patriarchy recruits women. And it's often said that women are the gatekeepers of the patriarchy. Let me just give you an example. If you say to your mother today, and I'm sure Dr. Josephine has experienced this, Mom, I want to run for office. Is she going to be like, yay, go girl?
No.
Is she going to be like, oh my gosh, you've got my full support? Is she going to be like, oh, what do you need? No. She's going to be like, don't do it. It's dangerous. Why don't you just get married? Just do your nice lawyer thing. Just tone down. Just, keep it safe. Why would you want to do that? Why do you want, why do you want to cause me so much pain? We don't, as women, we don't always support women. I say we don't always because there's some very big supporters that are women, but there are also some very big non-supporters, let me just use that word, that are women. Sometimes I remember my first campaign, first election I ran, which I also lost, Dr. Josephine. People would just say, I don't like her. This is young women. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. She's elite. Let's. Sometimes people would just look on the ballot and say, oh, I just voted for the man. I can't vote for a woman. I mean, if in the United States people can say women are supposed to submit to men, what more Africa? You know what I mean? And religion does play a role, and I'm talking about all religions. People are not attuned to women being in leadership. People don't like taking instructions for women. And it's 10 times worse when you're a young woman. People are like, who do you think you are? You think because you've got a fancy education that you can tell us what to do? No, you can't. So I think that's where the problem is. And remember, men are raised by women. It's the women who raise men to believe that, no, the woman should be in the kitchen. I should be the one going to school. She should serve me while I sit back, and she can't tell me what to do. I am the head of the house. Inheritance, no, because I carry the family name, it should all come to me. Women are very active in this. And also, like I said, men are very politically I'll hand it to them. They're quite smart. They recruit these women. Sometimes they don't even do the fighting themselves. They'll have proxy women who deal with you, as it were. And I think once you learn all those lessons, you learn how to maneuver. I mean, women are also smart. You learn how to play the game, you learn how to move, you learn how to conduct yourself and to, look like a dolphin but roll like a shark. But definitely, you can't assume that just because there are women, they're going to be voting for you. They can sometimes be your biggest hurdle. And I think you also could run the risk really of just becoming, you have to kind of like work really hard to demonstrate your competence so that people look past the fact that you're a woman. Because we are at the stage where people, like the presumption is that a woman should not. So you have to just work so hard that people are like, hey, she's a woman, but it's okay, and that's the answer you get. And it is what it is. And unfortunately, you can't sit on platforms and moan about it because people will be like, you see, this is exactly the weak ass women stuff we've always talked about. She can't take it. She can't take the heat. And look, if you can't take the heat, get out the kitchen, and then they won't listen to what you're talking about, the economy, they won't listen to your policy alternatives. You'll just be pigeonholed into this like women, they'll be like, no, she's just a feminist, So I think we really need to start the change from family level. Hopefully a new generation of mothers will raise our young girls. Like if you've got a young girl and she wants to be in front, let her be in front. If she's vocal, don't call her bossy, don't call her cheeky, encourage it. If she wants to lead, if she says, I want to be president, don't say, no. Don't, when she's 20, start pestering her about marriage. Let her explore. If that's what she wants, by all means, but help her understand that the world is her oyster. And don't say, no, it's unladylike. You can't be speaking like that. How can you say that about the president on live TV, on international TV? I mean, just almost by default, I ended up just as a rebellion to the system. I was just like, look, to hell with it. If I die, I die. If a bullet has my name on it, I don't care. Like, I want to see what will happen if a woman says and does these things. And I think that's the only attitude to take. That's the only way we start to begin to shift the narrative. When people are like, you know what, she's a woman, but I think she's actually our best shot. She may be a woman, but like, let's just run with it. Let's just see what happens.
Yeah. Let's see what happens. But most importantly, I think I love what you said about intervening at the family level, community level, particularly also because women themselves, interestingly enough, don't see themselves as political leaders, but see themselves as leaders in other spaces. I often joke, I'm Catholic, and I made the mistake of attending a Catholic Women's Association forum election, and it was the most vicious thing I'd ever seen. And I jokingly told my mom, why do women think they can't be politicians? This was the most political space I've ever been to. So I guess, is there a cognitive dissonance that women have that, well, they can lead, but they can't lead in politics? Or is it also the perception that politics is dirty, and therefore, because it is dirty, it shouldn't be a space occupied by women who are often thought of as mothers or children, keepers of the home?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. If you get into politics in your 20s and 30s, you then say to yourself, oh, okay, are men going to look at me and say, this is an unattractive kind of partner, I don't want to be.
Sorry, Fadzayi, you're on mute.
My apologies. She's got masculine energy. So all those social voices are continuously present. They're ubiquitous. And I think you just have to shift it in your own head first and foremost. And then, if you change your attitude and say, look, I'm not going to let this be a barrier, then, society eventually, slowly but surely, gets behind you.
I love that. So it's also just shifting internal and external narratives.
Yes.
Kulea, particularly for you who comes from a very marginalized and traditional community, how can we begin shifting the narrative in these communities to make them believe actually it is possible? Because you are a leader, particularly in your space. You lead a fantastic organization. How then can people see that in not just this organization, but even as a politician, she's going to be good? What can we do to shift that thinking?
Thank you. I think there are so many things that can be done. One, engaging the local leadership setups, like the elders. You know, we have different, like the faith-based leadership, where the churches should be able to promote women leadership, even in their own small setups from the church, and they keep talking about it. Because I remember there was a day I had a meeting and called all these religious leaders in Samburu, including Muslims, Christians, and all others, and we had this chat, and I told them, why don't you talk about FGM and child marriage in churches? Because it is not in the Bible. Like, it doesn't say cut the women before you marry them off. At least it said Jesus was circumcised at this age, but they didn't say the mother was circumcised before she gave birth to Jesus. And then we debated and we said, okay, it's not in the Bible. Then it was also not in the Quran. So it's not religious at all. So the religious leaders have a very good input if they are really used well, because they have all these crowds they preach to on Sundays or whatever day they go to church. But there's a lack of the messaging that should happen, because I believe the pulpit should be a real civic education platform. Because if you come to my church and you're sinning, like, seriously, why am I taking you? You know, I just want you. I was telling them, you are just interested in the money, in the sadaka. We call it sadaka contributions, and you're not interested in people going to heaven or wherever we are sending them through the church. So I challenged them and they accepted the challenge. And some of them at least even started now preaching in the church about ending child marriage and FGM, and bringing, and some of them are rescuing those kids and bringing them to us. So I think it's a very good platform that could be used at any community level, because they are there. Even the president used the church to get in, and he got in. So I think it's a very good platform for politics to happen, because sometimes they say, oh, politics in church, but politics plays a very big role in every institution, and especially the churches, because they can guide us and say, okay, you know, Josephine is not a good person, Natasha is a better person, we would rather bring Natasha, you know, that way. The church, when you say that in church, people will believe you. So I think for me, women leadership should be pushed in those platforms where there's already an existing crowd or an existing system, and also to ensure that when we are passing information about women leadership, for example, like in Kenya, they talk about a lot about civic education, but it doesn't happen. Like, literally, right now we have 1 year and a half to elections. It hasn't started, but we always hear there will be civic education, but we don't see it on the ground. And when it comes, it doesn't go to the real people who want to hear it. Just comes to towns, a few hotels here and there, a few people, we call them conference mongers, people just, the same people who keep going to listen to the FGM meetings, are the same people who go to the public participation, even in the county levels. So they're the same culprits. So messaging is never trickling to the village level. And because we have like local radios, which should be used to pass the information, but they're not being used well, because if you come and pass a message on TV, like, for example, laws are passed in parliament, right? So a law is passed in parliament, and parliamentarians, it ends there. Then it comes on news, on TV. Then maybe a few radio stations here and there who are excited to share it to their people, but that's it. The laws do not pass that level. So at the end of the day, even like the communities we work for, the remote ones, they don't know some things are illegal because it doesn't get to them. And our politicians don't want to tell them it's illegal so that they don't miss the vote. So they don't want to talk about things that affect. So for the women, the same thing, that now, like now our men are like, oh, you know, guys, you don't need to run for another seat. Actually, women, you're given that your seat. Now you have your seat. So women should concentrate on this woman representative seat. All the other seats are for men. So at the end of the day, we find that now men are putting us in this box and saying, stick there, women. For us, we are good. Everything is ours, from president, from governors, you know, the big seats are ours. Yours, stick to your one seat. So I think there's need a lot of civic education and trickling of information from the national level to the county level to the village level, because at the end of the day, information is not getting there. It is gathering dust in those laws offices, but then people at the grassroots don't even know what's law and what is not law. So I think the women, we need also to push the women themselves to create, like the women leaders, Natasha, I'm sorry to say, but our women leaders don't mentor. Or women politicians don't mentor their fellow younger women politicians who are coming up. They always see them as a threat. And they, if I'll tell you to challenge all the women, and call them and say, who do you mentor? Or anyone who's running for office, they'll tell you they're mentoring someone, but someone is not running for office. So yeah, so you don't
Allegedly.
find. Yes.
Can I say allegedly after that? Thank you.
Yes, allegedly, but we know what you're saying. So at the end of the day, we find that the few women in political leadership don't hold hands of the younger women or for future, because some women want to be in that position for life. And it is just impractical. And I love it because in one of our classes at the Futurelect, you brought a lady from Uganda who said there's a time to bow out of the stage in politics. And you just feel like, I think that's what even Honorable Mahere did and said, okay, now this thing, I'm not serving the purpose that I came to do. I can bow and say enough. But in Kenya, we have people who want to be in office for 100 years, if it's possible. They just want to be the only ones there. You're the only mheshimiwa ever in your village forever and ever and amen. So we want women who can hold hands of the younger women so that we grow. And at the end of the day, just say, one time, if you feel like your purpose has been served, oh, wow. If you feel like 2 times is what you want to achieve, what you want, good. If you feel you can't, you just need to mentor other people. It's not even for your position, but for other positions. So that's my feedback on the possibilities, like what is possible for our women. But we have so many spaces, churches, schools, because we also have those girls leaders. The one that just said the little girls who speak up and they're told, oh, shut up. It's too early for you to start shouting at your age. So I think we need also to mentor girls right from school going. And I like Futurelect because you guys started the training, the capacity building and mentorship program for young women like us who now want to continue in these positions for young women. And I believe if that is done continuously and in every country, even across Africa, we can increase the percentage of women coming to run for office. But without that, I think you guys also encouraged me. Something I don't want to forget. After running for office, someone should, I think Natasha, maybe Futurelect or someone else should add what is it called? Mental health for women who run for office and lose. Because, hey, I think that is somewhere that has been neglected. I think there should be a retreat for women who ran for office and didn't get it. Because some women have left this country because of mental health issues. Some people have just decided that they will disappear for life. And not that they were bad leaders, but just because of all the challenges they faced. They decided, this has killed my morale. I'm not going to run again. I don't want to do anything, but all I know is women need mental health support after running for office. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think the two things that have come up from this for me is one, if we're going to shift mindsets, we have to begin in the places of influence, churches, schools, communities, where people have a voice and those voices can be used to shift attitudes. But another question comes to mind when we speak about quotas, women representative, for example, in Kenya, and I'm sure in Zimbabwe, there are other quotas for women. Oftentimes we have seen, well, that has been great for giving women an entry into politics. It can also be a barrier where you're put into this box, as Dr. Kulea said. How can we then champion and say that this is not the only space that women should occupy, that in fact, this space was created for purposes of equality? How do we shift that, particularly in spaces that are very difficult? Fadzayi, I like to say you're one of the most courageous people I've met.
Thank you.
You did something that I will be honest and say I would never do. You resigned.
Yeah.
Let's begin with why you resigned and what lessons African women can take as they make the difficult decision as to whether and how they should participate politically.
Okay, so let me try and make the story short. I first ran as an independent and I lost in 2018. One of the big lessons that I learned when I lost was the electorate, particularly the constituency that I wanted to represent, was interested in a candidate who could join hands and collaborate with others to answer the national question. They didn't want like a tall poppy who would work alone. So that's the reason that when I was invited to join the main opposition after my campaign in 2018, I said yes. And when I joined, I mean, you never really lose because people remember the goodwill. And I remember my 2023 campaign was so much easier, right down to the primary, because my name was stamped on the Mount Pleasant seat. Thankfully, my independent color was yellow. Eventually, the main opposition took on the color yellow. So, you know, it was just the perfect storm politically for me. So, you know, a lot of people said, look, you've campaigned for this for 6 years. And when we got into parliament and the ruling party started to do, I mean, the most egregious things, dismembering the opposition, recalling people, illegally removing people from their seats. People said, no, Ms. Mahere loves this seat too much. She's put in too much. She's never going to walk away. And I remember saying to myself, after having been spokesperson, I really got to travel the length and breadth of Zimbabwe and to talk to ordinary citizens in various communities. And the conviction that I held around the kind of Zimbabwe, the kind of leadership I thought would be appropriate for Zimbabwe really crystallized. I remember forming a very strong conviction and a value system that I said, you know what? I saw hope in that community. That's a rural community that sits down at 7 o'clock to listen to their radio, to hear what I have to say every evening. I'm not going to let those people down. So when the problem started and when people, you know, money starts changing hands and all that sort of thing, I remember saying to myself, I'll have no part in this. I'm not here for a car. I can buy my own car. I'm not here for allowances. That's why I'm a lawyer, to fund my life. I'm doing this because I believe in something. And when it became clear to me that they wanted to silence me through, for example, the suspensions, chasing me out, putting the police, I said, you know what? I don't want to go to my constituency after 5 years and have nothing to show for the representation. And the space, the democratic space shrunk so much that the only form of protest that remained available to me was to say, look, I'm leaving all this. I'm not going to be part of this. And I've always said that I resigned from the post, but I never resigned from the cause. I've actually become more vocal now. And people still, my former party leader used to always say, the people know who their leaders are. And leadership is not defined by political position. Leadership is defined by your conviction, your relentlessness, your resilience, your ability to withstand. And I think the opportunity, we've been talking about the challenges and the threats, but I think the opportunity for a woman is that people respect courage. Any opportunity you have to demonstrate your courage and your conviction is always a gain with the electorate. People will remember that, and people's trust in you will grow, even if it takes a long time. And so I find that, you know, as women, because we are the underdogs, we're in such a unique position where we really can build this goodwill. And people, you know, there is a conception, true or not, that, you know, women are more motherly, they're less corrupt, they're, you know. So if you can actually use some of those stereotypes and show them to be true, that no, I actually care about the people. I'm not here, like, it'll take more than a car to move me. It's going to take more than a few trinkets. They're not going to be able to, you know, fly me first class to Europe for a parliamentary convention and think I'm going to keep quiet about the poverty, injustice, and corruption. It's simply not happening. Anyway, in a nutshell, that's why I resigned. I felt that, you know, the legitimacy of Parliament had been tainted so much that the House had become a sham. It was no longer a legitimate expression of the will of the people. And, you know, I believe in the Constitution. I actually go into Parliament not to get fuel coupons, but to actually make law, to actually hold the executive to account. And if that's not the business of Parliament, I have no business being there. Until we can be serious and say, look, this is what we want to do as Parliament. They want to change the Constitution to extend the president's term limit. I don't want my name associated with that nonsense. I want it to be abundantly clear. History must and posterity must record that I disagreed with that. And I think for the few months that I was in Parliament, people saw what was possible. I was extremely vocal, half the time fighting off police with my bare hands, speaking when I needed to, running the risk of being held in contempt of Parliament because I was really saying the truth. And I said, the Speaker's actually acting unconstitutionally. He doesn't get to silence the opposition. He doesn't get to act in a partisan way. We are here to represent our constituencies. The people have told you who they want to represent them. You can't then pluck those people out and then put your own people unopposed. That's utterly nonsense. And I'm not going to sit side by someone who abducted, tortured, and killed one of my party members and sit and say I'm making a law with that person. My conscience won't allow me to do that. And a number of our party members had been killed in the elections that happened after we entered Parliament, the by-elections that were caused by the recalls. And I thought of the shrieking wives, the little kids that, had been rendered orphans through these, just your party activists canvassing because they believe, and they get killed. They get abducted. I mean, in Kenya, you're seeing this abduction culture. In Tanzania, you're seeing it. But Zimbabwe wrote the playbook. Let me put it that way. And so I was like, I'm not going to sit side by side or even opposite people who behave like that. That when you raise points about how democracy is dead, their answer is to kill, is to shed blood. I was like, no, I don't want to be part of this. Let me go outside, we'll reconfigure, we'll regroup, and we'll take it from there. We'll maneuver and we'll find a way. But honestly, I'm not going to be associated with this mess that you call Parliament. And I'm on record saying that, look, it's a sham. It's an absolute sham. So that's why I resigned.
I know you don't like being called honorable, but you're very honorable to us.
Thank
You'll
you.
allow me to call you
And
honorable.
like I always say to you, the name honorable has just been abused so much.
Agreed.
Very dishonorable members of parliament, very dishonorable politicians are called honorable, that I'd rather just not take that title, call me Fadzayi. I'd much rather be with the people.
Absolutely. Fadzayi, there's something you said, actually you said many things that I think it's important for our audience to take home, is that one, people respect courage and they need to trust you. But two, just because you resigned as a parliamentarian doesn't mean you resigned as a leader. I think for me, that was a mic drop moment. And before I delve further into that, I'd like to welcome our guest, Honorable Joyce Bagala, MP Mitiene. Thank you for making time, particularly because one, you've had a death in your family, but also two, you're knee deep in campaign season in Uganda, wearing your party colors. So, Honorable Joyce, welcome. Thank you for making the time. Difficult circumstances. How are you? We are happy to see you. I'm going to give you a moment to settle in before I throw a question your way. But I think, Fadzayi, there's been something here by one of our partners, Lucinda, where she talks about mental health. And Dr. Kulea sort of touched on it, and everybody was like, yes, yes, yes. I think, how is it then you're able to keep the smile on your face that you have now? I would have lost my mind personally. I always say I don't have the mental fortitude for politics. I would have died a long time ago. Even Honorable Joyce is always, every time I see her, she's smiling. How can we support women politicians, not just if they lose, but even during office? Because they're still going through uniquely gendered challenges that men may not understand. How do we create spaces? Because there are some funders on the call as well. How do we create spaces for African women in politics to feel supported, to get psychosocial support? Fadzayi, then Dr. Kulea.
Thank you, Natasha. That is a very kind question. I could give you an answer for TV, but I want to be real, just in case there are young women or women who are planning on running. What I found personally is that there was no time for me to worry about my mental health. There just wasn't any time. It's only ever since that resignation that I'm now like learning how to play the piano, going swimming, having weekends to myself, being able to hang out with my friends, going to, get a facial. In the heat of the moment, victory sometimes was being able to wake up in the morning and keep going. I've already spoken about the violence in our context. And when I was spokesperson, I always had to let out the news, as it were, around what would happen. So I would sometimes wake up at 4 a.m. 4 a.m. is my wake up time. I do the 5 a.m. club if you
5
follow.
a.m. club.
I would sometimes wake up and I've got pictures of a dead body, like cut up into pieces, because that's what's happened in some rural community. One of our activists has been tortured and killed and has been found in a disused well belonging to a ruling party member. You wake up and there's a voice note from somewhere in some faraway parts of the country, someone saying, my house was burnt just last night. What do I do? Where do I go? So what you start to do is to carry like the pain of several communities in your, like, how do you get up having, I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen a dead body that has decomposed and is now like it's now white, as it were, because, it really is, something I can't even describe the kind of pain you go through. When I went to prison, again, I've always said that if I ever get anywhere near power, the first reform I'm going to introduce is a reform to the prison system. The place is torture. It is absolute torture. They will serve watery porridge, but say you can't have a spoon. So you've got all these women who are lapping up this watery porridge with their bare hands. You have the eating times in such a way where, lunchtime is at 12 o'clock. Dinner is at 2 o'clock because lights out is at 3. So imagine you haven't eaten for all those hours, so someone will eat at 12. And then they don't know when they're going to eat again, but the next meal comes so close. They're again eating this very hard, I think you guys call it ugali, but sadza here in Zimbabwe. I watched women menstruate with one pad for like 2 days, and that also does a number on you, not to mention just the torture of being in prison. And remember, I'm a lawyer. So I'm on the other side of the justice system, but now you're really at the mercy of these people. And your mother comes to visit you in jail. My mother had just had spine surgery. And when she saw me walk towards her, she just starts crying. Remember, this is the mother who had said, stay away from this. It's dangerous. Don't do it. She was right. But anyway, you see, and she starts shrieking, like crying, like ugly crying. And she's like, honestly, how can I send my child to school for her to go to jail? Now, it doesn't matter how high sounding your reasons for being in jail are, that it's political persecution. You're like, oh my gosh, have I let my parents down? It's tortuous to you mentally, not to mention just the surveillance. Like you get followed around in Zimbabwe, left, right, and center. I would fly. I remember when I went to the UN in Geneva and I gave a speech. Just about, not about other people. This time it was about my own experience and what had happened to me. Because I was like, you know what, I'm already on trial for communicating falsehoods prejudicial to the state. Let me tell my own story so that they don't say I made this up. I literally get there and they're like police waiting for me. And I land at Robert Mugabe, the international airport, and like all these messages are coming in. Are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, what's everyone asking me if I'm okay? Of course I'm okay. They're like, you've been on the news for the last. So again, you just never know whether or not they're following you, when they're going to arrest you. And remember, when you're now, on bail for 3 charges, like the chances of you getting bail the next time are nil. The police would go to my parents' house and say, we're looking for her. And then I get 5 missed calls on a Sunday morning from my father, especially during COVID. Hi, by the way, the police were here. They're looking for you. They said it's about a tweet. Like, imagine getting that message from your dad and you're like, holy moly. And remember, you asked a very good question about political parties and how they support. It's not as though the party has infrastructure around you that's going to protect you. You're responsible for your own security, your own legal strategy, everything. is on you. So you really have to quickly come up with a plan and a team. In short, what am I saying? You have to be ready as a woman for that. You really have to increase your threshold of being able to take pain. You really have to take pain. By the time someone calls and says, are you okay? Like, I'm in jail. Of course I'm not okay. What do you want me to do? You want me to cry? And yet you can't cry because you'll be that crying politician, and nobody likes a politician who cries. And then you're going to court and all the journalists are like focusing on you. They're waiting because remember, I'm like this middle class professional. So people are like, prison is what's going to break her this time. People are waiting for you to fall apart. And you just have to muster a smile. Like there's no time for you to be like, oh, my mental health is in the toilet. There simply is no time. Also, when you're like fighting, and remember, the vultures come after you, the journalists come after you, stories come out, especially with online news. People are writing things left, right, and center. They're saying you stole this person's husband, you're pregnant with that. I mean, the stories are so contradictory, they don't even make sense. But your father is sitting your mother down and saying, what is this I'm hearing that Fadzayi is pregnant? Why aren't you talking to your daughter? And yet it's fake news. And how do you say to people, look, I'm not pregnant? And then you're like, okay, 9 months have passed. Where's the pregnancy? They're like, you aborted it. You think we're stupid, you aborted it. So your mental health is going to take a hit. You kind of have a responsibility yourself to create a support system around you. And remember, for the reasons that I've said, it can be your family, but sometimes it shouldn't be your family because you're actually making them panic sometimes. You need a team. You need a team of professionals around you. You've got a legal strategy, you've got a comm strategy, you've got people who you're going to be able to cry to because you cannot cry to the world. You cannot tell people that, I mean, I've got this moniker on social media where I call myself the Iron Lady. Like, you will not ever see me sweat. I'm never going to give you that satisfaction. Even when the police came into parliament to try and beat us up, I was like, there's no way I'm going to go on national TV. Like, there be images of me getting beaten up by the police. I was like, hell no, I'll absolutely fight back. And so you really have to do that for yourself. And then, sometimes there isn't time to go on holiday. Like your weekends off, we're going to rallies. You are going from this part of the country, like from the south to the north. There's no time for you to be like, no, I just need to go to Bali for like a little chill. No, there simply isn't that time, especially during the peak of the season. So you really have to hold it together. And I think you have to build the muscle prior to going in. You have to count the cost, and you really have to be certain of your conviction, because sometimes your conviction is the only fuel that's going to take you through. But you know your own threshold. When you are now maybe suicidal, you must by yourself just say, look, I'm taking a step back. Nothing is worth dying for. But you just have to remember at all times that it's not built to be easy. It really isn't. And it's not. And there are no easy answers. You need different things at different times. Sometimes what you simply need is sleep, exercise, and hydration, but you don't have the time for it. You just don't have the time for it. Sometimes the money is there, but the safety isn't. Your funders are actually getting into trouble. So people are like, we don't want to get involved with this. Sometimes, I mean, if people are harassing you online and saying you're pregnant, like what support? People be like, it's okay. No, it's not okay. Now everyone thinks I'm like promiscuous, and I'm not. They're like, oh no, but we love you even if you're promiscuous. And you're like, no, but I'm not promiscuous.
That's not the point.
Exactly. So yeah. Sometimes
I really
just
like,
a message
yeah,
to say,
I love,
are you
yeah,
okay?
yeah. I really love what you talked about around support systems. And Honorable Joyce Bagala, you're on the campaign trail. I'll first ask, how are you? How's the campaign trail? Uganda is also quite precarious politically. How are you handling things?
Hi, Natasha. Hi, everyone. I am
Hi.
well. I must say that I'm well. Unfortunately, when you left Kampala about a month ago or 3 weeks, we were into our internal elections as a party. And maybe I need to give you the bad news because my party didn't give me the flag. So, and I told you.
No,
Oh, yes. But I told
no.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I told you, and but the campaign trail is going on well. It's definitely tiring. It's definitely stressful, but we are keeping on, keeping on. Yeah, yeah. So we are dealing with it.
I think then just to ask that question, particularly around political parties, and because you've been such a vocal member of your political party, do you feel that women are often unsupported by their political parties, particularly when they're extremely loyal, like you've been? And of course, we don't have to give detail, but generally speaking, from what you've seen across the country, because you're also a journalist by profession. So you've
Yeah.
seen this both at different levels.
Yeah, certainly. And I would like to appreciate the person that I found on the floor, Fadzayi. I hope I got the name right. I think she brings out everything. I think whatever is happening in her country, Zimbabwe, is what is happening in Uganda. And for political parties, like you said, I shouldn't give details. Women, especially, do not get the support they're supposed to get from the political parties. First of all, you must understand that most of the political parties in Uganda are controlled by men. There is no political party in Uganda that is headed by women. There's just one new one. The woman is a singer, and it's a party that just revolved into a different party, and it's new. It's about 2 months old. That is the only party that is headed by a woman. And there's a difference between being headed and being controlled. So there is no political party in Uganda that is controlled by women. There's no political party in Uganda where women have authority, where women have power, where women have a say. But most importantly, there's no political party in Uganda where women occupy important positions in those parties. If I could give an example of the ruling NRM party in Uganda, you have seen that they had their primary elections, and you saw even how women were portrayed in the media. I was at a dialogue yesterday looking at how women are portrayed in the media, and they wanted me to give a talk because I have been a media personality and then I am a politician. And we're looking at one particular headline where the former Speaker of Parliament in Uganda was contesting with the current Speaker of Parliament for a set position, the top organ of the NRM. And the person who needed to make the decision for any of those two was the president. The president, who is the chairman of the NRM. And you know, the headline was, "The Queen's Fight for the Approval of the King." So you know, from the very start, at that very headline, they are lowering the capacity of women, the quality of women, the capabilities of women, looking at women in a sexist way as the queens fighting for the approval of the king. So at the end of the day, even for a woman to occupy an office in a political party, it has to be approved by those controlling the party, and those are none other than the men. So to be very direct, yes, women are not supported by political parties. I could say some women are supported by individuals in political parties, definitely for selfish interests. Yeah, and it is the same in all other parties, including mine.
I'm sorry, I'm speaking on mute. How were you able to quickly navigate not getting your party ticket and still saying, I'm still throwing my hat in the ring? Again, because many people are on the call and they're like, how can I navigate that? I didn't get the party ticket, but I still want to do this. What drove you to
First of
say, I'm
all,
going to do it?
when I heard Fadzayi talk about resignation from parliament, I thought, this woman is so courageous. I thought I need to be proud of her because in many cases, it is the best thing to do. However, in my situation, we had a conversation around that when you were in Kampala. I know from the start that I had been, I had been persecuted for my strong views, for being opinionated, for standing my ground on particular issues. And I said, it doesn't matter, even within, because the thing is, we in the opposition are fighting to get to power, are fighting to go to a new Uganda, are fighting for democracy, are fighting for the rights of women, are fighting for freedom of expression. Like, why should I then accept my own political party to antagonize that. I think because if we want freedom of expression and we're fighting government because of that, then we should not do that in the opposition. And for me, that's where I pick my courage. And you know what I've done? I have gone back to my constituency and I'm holding consultative meetings. I don't know if you follow my social media. I have been holding stakeholders meetings and I made them public so that the people can see exactly what the people want, what the people believe in. And you must have seen the backlash when my president of a political party came to my constituency to campaign and instead announced another person. The reaction was so telling. So I am meeting religious leaders, I'm meeting opinion leaders, I am meeting the party members, and I'm telling them, and I know that most of them know, and that's why it has been in the news. Every other headline is about Joyce Bagala being denied the party ticket and the reasons. I heard Fadzayi talking about online news, and then people talking about you being pregnant when you're not pregnant. People have said that about me. People saying, oh, this one stole this one's husband. I was amazed how the situation is the same. So I'm picking courage. I've already picked the courage. And I told you, I really don't dwell on the negativity. I don't dwell on the past. That has happened, it has happened. I am just going forward.
I absolutely love that. And I think because I want to ensure that we're answering some questions that people have. There's some questions that are coming in for me via WhatsApp for you all. But before I get into that, I would love Dr. Kulea to speak about mental health and just navigating it, because you lost an election and you're saying, I'm doing this again. How are you navigating and saying, I'm not going to lose my mind. I'm not going to lose my family. I'm still going to continue. If you have questions, please put them on the chat box and I will ensure that the guests answer it as we begin to wind down.
Thank you very much, Natasha. And thank you. Hi, Joyce. I love your courage. I keep going. Yeah, I'd like to open it up by saying supporting women in politics should not be charity. It should be justice, you know?
I love that.
Yeah, so it's our right to run, it's our right to participate in politics, and it's just because of these patriarchal communities that we come from, or this continent that we are in. But at the end of the day, I would say I'll encourage my fellow political women and say, let's keep going. So Natasha, you're asking a very important point on mental health. And for me, supporting women who are in politics meant in their mental journey, health journey, should not start just at the beginning or at the end of the campaign trails, because supporting women in politics should just be a continuous process, not just during the elective season. So for me, I'll say our women need, like what Futurelect is doing, empowerment, trainings on public speaking, all these things. Especially as we know, many young women want to come to politics, but they fear because they feel like they don't have all those qualities. And also, they'll need a lot of visibility, networks, and all these things like that. So mental health should be before, during, and after. Because if we target a specific time, yes, before, during, and after, because at the end of the day, some women are really invisible during the campaign trails. And some of them, actually, some women are elected and you're like, who is that? Like, okay. When they're introducing them, even sometimes they call them on media and someone cannot speak. So you're like, how was this woman was even elected? And you're like, is that my representative? They cannot even introduce themselves. So at the end of the day, just as Honorable Joyce has said, like the women have disadvantages in parties right from that level, like just even being denied, because someone like her, why should she be denied a ticket? And she would be the one to represent her people well. Maybe the person who was given might not do even half of what she's doing. And maybe I'm guessing, Joyce, it's a man, of course, who was given your ticket. So if you, yes. So my message is before election season, during, and after, because these women need continuous support. They need continuous mentorship. They need continuous holding of hands, because as I gave my story and I said I ran alone, I didn't have a lineup, I didn't even have a party. I had to pick a party 3 months to election just because I was trying to avoid the party politics. I was trying to run away from, oh, you just come to the big party so that if you lose elections, you're nominated. I'm like, no, I'm running to win. Whatever is called party nomination, whatever nominations later, that can come later because I have an issue with nominating women to parliament, especially women who didn't participate in election and women who are they were never seen in those campaign trails. They were never active in the party. They didn't run for office. I have always said, if the parties need to nominate women to sit on those, to fill those seats for women, they should give people who ran and didn't get, elected, because those are the women who had an agenda. But I cannot just sit somewhere and we are there to be, you pick any woman in a skirt to put her to represent all women just because it's a women position. And that's why we get wrong, because yes, we have no problem other women being given this position, but which woman is this? Are we talking about? Is it just any other woman? And sometimes we have to accept realities, because you find why were you given that nomination while you are not active at all? You didn't participate in an election. You are not seen in any party. You are not, you are not anywhere in the picture. So the other woman who had ideas, who had goals, who had visions for this, for your people, we really want to do development projects for your people. Suddenly you are a nobody because now you are disrespectful, you're too much, you talk a lot, you think you know it all, you are going nowhere, you will not be nominated, you will not get that certificate, they just kick you. And sometimes they even steal your election. Even if, Joyce, maybe they gave you the certificate, they would wait for it, then they steal the election for your election and say you didn't win. So sometimes it's always easier that they took your heartbreak earlier. So I see that our women, we face the mental health continuously, because you come out and say, I'm here, I want to bring this change. And someone is sitting there and saying, she's too much, we cannot accept her. Actually, we should kill her. Like me, someone was telling me, if you go to parliament, they will assassinate you because you don't keep quiet, and you will not keep quiet when people are being intimidated or when they're being pressurized. So I'll tell them, it's okay. If we have to die for the right causes, we are here. But at the end of the day, we need the mental support, health support. We need the continuous hand-holding by other continuous, not just women in politics, even people outside politics, because those are the people we need to hear from. They need to keep encouraging us and say, keep going, we are here for you. Just keep going. Don't kill yourself. Don't faint in the middle, because these men can be too much. So for me, before, during, and after, and I will repeat again, supporting women in politics should not be charity. It should be justice. Thank you.
I love that. I love that, Dr. Kulea. I'm going to ask different questions to different people. The first question will be to Fadzayi. How can women manage financial hurdles on the campaign trail? No, sorry, that question is for Joyce, Honorable Joyce Bagala. The question for you, Fadzayi, is how do you imagine or see women's participation and status in future African politics? Thank you for the question, Ufitinema, Donatha, and Naima Rajab. So the first question is to you, Honorable Bagala. How can women manage their financial hurdles during campaigns? Then we'll go to Fadzayi for the second question. Then I'll ask Dr. Kulea the last question. Sorry, Honorable Joyce, you're on mute.
All right. Thank you, Natasha. Good question, because campaigns actually need money. But you see, generally, men have more money than women. It is general, because men have more deals, they're more corrupt, and all that. And women are less of that. But at the end of the day, you need money for your campaign, you need money for fuel, you need money for the agents, you need money for meals, you need money for venues for your campaign rallies. So at the end of the day, as a woman politician, you need to plan. You need to plan. And planning also involves budgeting. There's no way you can get resources without budgeting. And that is part of the planning. You need to understand, first of all, the population from which you rally your support. You need to understand your area. You need to understand what you need before you even go into the election. Because if you don't do that ahead of time, then you might get into the middle of it and you fail. Because you can fail to even win an election, and you only fail because you didn't have money for polling agents. So the most important thing is planning. Planning, planning, planning. Planning for your teams, planning for yourself, planning for how many cars you will need. Of course, in Nairobi, there are borders, the motorcycles, which is the same in Uganda. I don't know which the other countries. So you need to plan for those as well, because they'll need fuel, maybe to put up your posters. You need the money for the posters, for the branding generally, for media. As we speak right now, we have a lot of private media in Uganda, and it is paid for. There are political talk shows that are not paid for. Unfortunately, so many women may not be able to get to those radio stations or TV stations or media stations because the media does not think those women are fit or they can speak to their audience. They're not confident enough. Maybe they're not even controversial enough, because media these days is about following, is about likes, is about, So at the end of the day, there are women who are denied the opportunity to access media because they are maybe low on energy, and their way of expression may not be appreciated on media. So at the end of the day, you must understand what are the most important issues to deal with. Then you say publicity, and in publicity, what do you need? You need media, you need posters, you need t-shirts, you need all sorts of branding. What else? You need fuel, you need transport. What else? You need money for polling agents, especially that last day. You see, when we start the campaigns, you can be able to convince the voters. They could see how you speak, they could see your plans, they could get into you could get into their hearts. But the thing is, on the last day, for instance, my district has 17 sub-counties, and that's huge. I have more than 350 polling stations. So you need to plan for more than 350 polling agents. If you don't have money to pay those people, to protect them even, you must understand, you plan, you know how much money you have as an individual, how much money can be contributed by your friends, how much money can be contributed by other donors, depending on their interests. Yeah.
It's all about planning and strategy, looking ahead, having
Exactly.
a campaign strategy, a fundraising strategy, and being
Yes.
prepared for the journey ahead. Fadzayi, over
Exactly.
to you.
So the question was, how do I see the future of leadership on the continent? I've got two answers. If things continue on the trajectory that they're on right now, it's not looking bright at all. We're going to have very corrupt, very old, very uninspiring men with no grand vision to take the continent forward. People who just don't have any visionary thinking about what to do with the African continent. Like, look at the Emirates. Just in our lifetime, they've completely transformed a desert into something we have to respect. Beautiful. Look at Singapore. Just in one generation, just the difference ethical, competent leadership, visionary thinking can make. There are not as many stories here on the continent that can offer that. So I think that, and even if you look at the younger generation, and Dr. Josephine, you're going to have to forgive me here. I remember during the Gen Z protests in Nairobi, I went to Nairobi because I'm always up for protest action. One thing that surprised me, I love talking to ordinary people, but when I spoke to the young people, I was like, oh, okay, you are going to storm parliament and you're going to remove the leaders. Great. It's a tribeless, partyless, genderless, all of those
All less.
revolution. I said beautiful. Okay, so once you remove Ruto from State House, who's getting in? Are you guys ready? They're like, no, we don't want to lead. We just want someone, someone should just, we don't want to worry about politics, but we just want good leaders. And I was like, but where are these good leaders going to come from if you don't step up? The story is the same across the board, whether it's in Zimbabwe, whether it's in South Africa, whether it's in Kenya, whether it's in Uganda, everywhere. Unless people who believe strongly in ethical, competent, visionary leadership stand up. Get off from the sidelines. Get off from their pretty air-conditioned offices. Get off writing think pieces in the New York Times and the Guardian. Get off the BBC to opine about what should happen until we get out of those African Union talk shops and actually get into the messy, hairy, audacious business of political leadership. We're not going to see any change. And I don't think it's a gender thing. I am just as critical of incompetent women leaders in Zimbabwe. I'm just as critical of corrupt women leaders in Zimbabwe. I'm just as critical of unethical women leaders in Zimbabwe, because for me, quality leadership overrides everything. And I do think we just have to get to a place as a continent and individually in our countries where we say, you know, we really have to be the change we wish to see. I would hate for a new opposition government to come in Uganda and they do, you know, things that are 10 times worse than Museveni was doing. That they're now muzzling the young people that they went to office. That they are now stealing the very funds that they were shouting to protect when they were in opposition. I really would love, and you know, it's across the board. And I say this to Zimbabwe, I say it to Kenya, I say it everywhere. When we speak of change, it's not just a change of face. It's not just a change of gender. It's not just a change of anything that's identity related, but it's just a change of the actual ethos, the style of doing politics, how we run our nations, what, you know, having a 50-year view of how we take the nation forward. When the colonialists, who I'm very critical of, came, they had a plan for the continent. They had a very solid plan. Unfortunately, Pan-Africanism happened and decolonialization happened, but we did not have our own counter plan for how to take the continent forward. And we need to develop that. So it's not just about removing Mugabe or removing Mnangagwa or removing Ruto or removing anyone, because what you'll actually find is that these old men have created a system. There's always someone waiting in the wings. Dictatorships are never short of succession. And the corruption that they've created, it's embedded everywhere. You'll find it in all your state institutions. And so a simple change of face won't cut it. And we learned that lesson very well when Mugabe left. He left like a 10-headed monster. You know those things in Greek mythology where you cut off the head and then 6 heads grow? That's what we had. So I really would love for a situation where we get better quality leaders and people who really want to do good by the continent. They don't want to just mine the diamonds and steal them and bank the money in Switzerland. They don't want to just like steal all the gold and shaft it all to Dubai, but they really want to build. I hate stories, you know, that are told of how in Harare you can't access clean tap water. It's an indictment on the leadership. The fact that people are dying of typhoid, a medieval disease, that people will go to a public hospital, they can't get basic medication, they can't get an x-ray done. The leaders have failed, and the new leaders that come have to really sort that out and then take the country forward. Like the rest of the world is talking about AI, they're talking about climate change. We don't even have the luxury of joining those conversations. And if we do so, we're really doing so dishonestly because our problems are right down to we don't have electricity. How can you have 23 hours of load shedding in Harare and expect industry to take off? How do you fail to respect basic property rights and then expect that you're going to attract big patient capital? It's simply not going to happen. So we need leaders who are really thinking along those lines. We've got big bad China, we've got big bad Russia. Yes, they didn't colonize us, but they have a plan for us. Europe has a plan for us. Unfortunately, we're the only ones who don't have a plan for ourselves. That has to change.
I love that. I think at the heart of what you've said, and I feel like it's just a mic drop, is that we don't want descriptive representation, we want substantive representation that matters and transforms. Dr. Josephine, one question from me. What are the 2 things that women should focus on the campaign trail? The 2 important things that women should focus on when they're campaigning?
Thank you very much, Natasha. Actually, the two things that the women should focus on is their vision. Like, you came up as a leader to run for office for something. You didn't just you're not waking up and told, okay, wake up, run for office. So you had a vision. So work on your vision, because without a vision, you're also just running, you're planless. You don't know what you're doing. You're trying things here and there. And with a vision also comes a plan, because the plan now sets you on the ground and tells you how to roll a strategy to roll out your vision and how to bring it to the people. And I will not forget the faith. And because faith in action, we need it. Like, we just need to keep the faith going, because without God, I don't think women would be doing anything. Even it is not the men. For me, it's God. I think I'm even here because of God, actually. Yeah, all of us are. So I have seen the things women like face. I don't know how those women who don't have faith do it, because for me, last election, it was God. I was being brought witchcraft, like, all those kind of things, all the things I would say. There's things that people do in politics, it scares you away. You would just want to run away and say, why don't I leave this thing? Then you remember you have the vision. And you're like, no, I'm not going to be a coward. I'm not going to, because I remember some of my supporters were bringing me, ideas. You need to get a witch. You have to have this voodoo for you to win elections. You have to have these things. Literally, they were sending people to my home. They were bringing them. They were bringing those things. And for me, I just stayed with God. I said that prayer is always my guide. I'm not going to involve myself in any of those things. So at the end of the day, even prayer grounded me, because if you don't have God, seriously, for me, I don't know how I would survive. Because at the end of the day, I told you guys I didn't have a party. I line up. I was not being in a small party which was 3 months old in Kenya is as good as you're a partless. You're just like running on your own. And I aligned myself to a coalition because that new party was there. So I kind of didn't even have a presidential candidate. I had, because that small party was under it, but I was not being recognized. But with the vision that I had, with the strategy that I had, I went for it. I put God first, and I said, you know what? Even after the election was stolen, I decided, okay, I'm not gonna kill myself about it. I never did a fundraiser. I didn't have funding, as Dr. Joyce said. Funding is very critical. We all know that it's very expensive to run for office. Women don't get that free money like some men do out of deals and other things. So for me, what I did is I used all my savings. Sorry to say, but because I got in my grounding, I went back to my faith after the elections. I lost everything, and I said, okay, I'll start.
I think she's frozen.
Strategy.
Oh, okay.
Am I frozen? Yeah, so I'm saying faith, strategy, and a vision. That once you have your vision with your strategy, put God first, things will work out.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Kulea. As we wrap up, and you'll forgive me, we are running slightly over time. I want to just quote something that Honorable Joyce Bagala spoke about yesterday. The media has often portrayed female politicians in a sexist and unfair manner, unlike their male counterparts. Moreover, political parties have continued to offer few opportunities to women leaders, reflecting a persistent gender imbalance in politics. Those were your words, Honorable Joyce Bagala, yesterday. Fantastic words. I'm going to request that you make closing remarks, because I think the only way to end this is for you to close in your own words, because this has been a fantastic session. We'll begin with you, Dr. Kulea, a minute just to have closing remarks on the way forward for African women in politics, but particularly for yourselves. What is the way forward? And just as a by the way, Honorable Kulea gave up a scholarship so she could be on the ground to campaign politically. So this is what it means to be committed to the cause. We are rooting for you, Honorable Dr. Kulea. Over to you, 1 minute. Closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, Natasha, it's true. I lost this. I let go the scholarship. I was told by the Gen Zs, if I go for 9 months scholarship, then I'll come back when it's 6 months to election, and they won't have time to campaign for me. And that's the mistake I did last time. I just went into election for the last 6 months, so we didn't even cover half of the whole county. So yeah, and so I'll just like to put my closing remarks in a very simple way and say that women should go for all these positions. We should not be limited. No one should pick for us what positions we want to run. Like I said, our community now is like, oh, women have one position, just stick there. So I'll just encourage our women, like, let's go for the positions, because as I said, politics should not be charity for the women. It should be justice. So let's run for all the offices that we want, and nobody should discourage us. Even for those of us who run and lose office, we should not give up. Let's come back and pick up where we left, because right now, what I love about my campaign, I never walked away. I continued being on the ground even after I lost. And now I have the upper edge over my opponents, because they're now coming back now, because it's 1 year and a half to elections and they're all over the place. My supporters, and they're like, where have you been? So now your campaign is almost here, you're coming back. So I'll tell the women, keep the consistency, do not give up, because I also wanted to give up. Immediately I said, I'm done. Maybe I should go for 2 years and come back. But I was encouraged and told, do not go away from the community. The moment you go away, they'll forget about you. But as long as you're with them, and I continued supporting them and visiting those who were being harassed, the banditry areas, the women who were being, beaten because their children are the bandits, so by the government. So I was there for my people. So now they remember all that. And I'm ready to start my campaigns early next year, because I need like 1.5 years. It's a whole county. It's huge, 15 wards. So and then my county is very big. It's like 22,000 square kilometer, and it's a very rough terrain. So I need a lot of time to just keep going village to village, because if they don't see you, they don't believe in you. They have to see you and they have to hear you. So I am starting early to encourage those who are rooting for me. And this time around, we are going to Parliament. So to my fellow women running for office, let's do this and see you in Parliament. Thank you.
I'm going to insist, although you refuse to call you Honorable Fadzayi Mahere, because you are honorable. You have done amazing. You are courageous. And I really am proud to call you friend. Some closing remarks from you.
Okay, so my first thing, obviously, is to wish my dear sisters, Dr. Josephine and Honorable Joyce, all the best for the future. Like I said, leadership is not a position. Win or lose, you can continue to lead and make your mark in the community. And I wish you the best, and thank you for sharing all your insights. I'd like to just close with maybe 3 quick ideas. The first is that being a woman should never be a barrier, but at the same time, it's not a pass. We don't just want bums on seats when we get into Parliament. We want women who are seriously going to champion the cause for building better nations, including, the cause of women. You shouldn't just be like a statistic, a data point. And that requires us to have a bit of a mindset shift. We must never think that because you're a woman, you can't. You certainly can. The second idea that I'd like to share is that competence matters. One of the things that will help you get over the gender hurdle is when people start to see just how sharp and competent and effective you are. When you start to cut through in conversations, it really does make a difference. Whenever I'm speaking to young lawyers or lawyers in training, I do say that at the end of the day, people want to win their cases. People aren't going to be like, oh, she's a woman, so, they want to win. And if you're the person who wins, they're going to go for you. So the same applies in politics. You have to be someone who really can take things head on, can take the head of state head on and say, no, with all due respect, this is incorrect for A, B, C, D. Not just we hate ZANU-PF, but, really giving policy points and building on your expertise. I always say that the room for improvement can never be filled. And, you know, sometimes the way to close the gap between men and women is for people to really see that you know what you're talking about. You've read the blue book before you go and debate in Parliament. You've read the reports and you've got something competent and intelligent to say. Then finally, courage. You know, they say in entrepreneurship, scared money doesn't make money. If you're scared in politics, you're not going to go far. Even if you win, if you know, do just enough to coast and you never take risks and you never demonstrate courage, you'll just be a normal politician. But normal politicians don't change the world. The people who really make history and change things are people who choose to be courageous, choose to think authentically, choose to present authentically, and to do things that make sense, but people aren't doing because they're too scared. And I find that courage, you know, people think that women are weak, but women have the courage to bear babies, for heaven's sake. You know what I mean? The kind of things we put up with, we can walk right across the market with a big basket of tomatoes on our heads. Like, what more taking on the nation? Let's take these people on. Let's take the system on. Let's take even international actors on. If China is in your country and they're doing the wrong thing, I'm sorry, they're no sacred cows. We have to have the courage to speak. And it doesn't matter that I'm a woman. It doesn't, even if I'm a girl on Twitter, I'm going to say my piece. If I think Britain is intervening in a way that I think is improper, I will absolutely say to the ambassador, to the Minister for Africa, that I don't think that's right. You don't get to say that to us. You don't get to usurp our agency as citizens. And so courage, courage, courage. Sometimes it will come at a cost, but I promise you it will be worth it. You think that prison or whatever, the worst thing you can imagine is going to, you know, break you. It actually hardens you. You actually come out of there saying, you know what? This is actually why I speak out so much, because this should never happen. This should never happen to a young person who just believes different. So thank you so much. It's been a gift to be a part of this conversation. I wish everyone, all the women, all the best. We want to see more women in the political space on the continent.
Thank you so much. We're going to close with you, Honorable Joyce Bagala, who's on the campaign trail. After this call, you're getting into the streets to campaign. And we wish you well. We wish you success. And we can't wait to celebrate you in January.
Thank you so much, Natasha, and thank you so much for all the women for being part of this conversation. I'd like to apologize. I haven't been so stable with the network because I've been moving. As coming from a country to come for a weekly radio talk show that I can't miss. So I really apologize for that. I appreciate the contributions of everyone. I already love Honorable Fadzayi. I really, really love you. I love your views. I think you and I relate in a way. So my parting shots is, first of all, we need to be authentic. When you are authentic, a woman politician, in everything that you do, you don't regret anything. You know you're doing the right thing because you are yourself, but also to be courageous. There are many women who get discouraged at some point when they face hurdles, when they face challenges. But the thing is, you need to wake up the next day much stronger with more positivity. Thank you so much.
I have nothing more to add except to say thank you to my wonderful panelists, Honorable Joyce Bagala, Fadzayi Mahere, Dr. Josephine Kulea. And from us at Futurelect, my name is Natasha Kimani, the Regional
Natasha.
East Africa. Thank you for giving us your time. Thank you to the panelists, and we wish you well. Please,
thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and have a lovely evening, good morning, or afternoon, depending on where you are.
Thank you,
and have a
ladies.
lovely
Take care.
evening. Bye.